See, you even got the killing wrong. You're trying to make out I just went out and blatantly killed somebody. No, nobody went through hell. Enjoyment turned to disaster. That's what happened.
In 1994, a sickening remark made by a young child taken into care led to one of the biggest murder investigations in British history. After being taken away from her parents, Fred and Rose West's youngest daughter explained to her foster mother that she had another sister. After querying her whereabouts, the young girl's response would shock the nation. The Wests maintained an image of a normal family life, but what went on behind the closed doors of number 25 Cromwell Street is far darker. Before Fred West could face justice for the atrocities to which he was partly responsible for, he committed suicide. Rose West was jailed for life. In this short documentary, we'll be uncovering the truth about the Wests, and we'll be focusing on the role which Rose West played in their murderous partnership. "25 years ago, one of the most disturbing murder cases in British history came to light when police began digging up the garden of an ordinary house on an ordinary street. This is 25 Cromwell Street. The Wests lived here for 20 years, and in that time, they killed 9 people. The police located 3 other bodies elsewhere, bringing the total number of victims up to 12. They were all females between the ages of 8 and 27. At least 2 of them were lodgers at the Wests' home at the time of their disappearance. The Wests presented the appearance of a normal family life. Their children attended local schools, and Fred West was an industrious worker, employed as a builder by Derek and Wendy Thompson. Fred put his build skills to use at home, extending the house and fixing up the cellar, which would later be used as a torture chamber and was also used as a place to bury victims. Later on, Fred West concreted over the cellar floor, and it became a bedroom for their younger children. They slept there, completely unaware that beneath them lay the bodies of 5 young women. The Wests had gotten away with murder for years, although these were not the only crimes which they were committing. Fred and Rose West were also sexually abusing a number of their children, and despite being threatened to stay silent, one of their daughters told a friend what had been going on. The youngest children were taken into care and never again returned to their family home. Fred and Rose West were arrested, but the children were too scared to give evidence against their parents, and the case collapsed. The Wests thought they were off the hook, but one of the detectives investigating the couple discovered that one of their oldest children, 16-year-old Heather West, had not been seen for 6 years. Subsequently, while in care and away from the threat of their parents, the West children began to talk about their life at 25 Cromwell Street. This is when Fred and Rose West's web of deceit would come crashing down. One of their daughters was talking with her foster mother about life in her family home when she mentioned that she had an older sister. Her foster mother replied, asking where she was. The young girl responded, "Under the patio." Luckily, the foster mother did not dismiss this fanciful claim and took it seriously, passing what the young girl had told her on to social services, who then contacted authorities. In February 1994, the police began digging up the garden of 25 Cromwell Street in the hope of finding the body of Heather West, but before any remains could be found, Fred West made a startling confession.
I looked around everywhere trying to find a knife or something. I mean, I looked at the axe. I had a chopped axe, and there's no way I could touch her with it. Not that case or with anything like that. I just couldn't do it. So I looked up and I see this knife sticking out. It got like 2 prongs on the end, 2 sharp points comes out on the end of him, and then it got big serrated edges all along it. You saw blocks of ice with. And I got that, and I tried it with the big ones first, and it was terrible, man. I'm sweating. I'm just about everything that's going on this time. So I finally managed to do it, to take her head off, and then her legs. And it was unbearable. And I mean, I can hear that now in my sleep. I wake up very often screaming when I can hear that go in.
Fred confessed to killing Heather, taking all of the responsibility and claiming that Rose had no knowledge of what happened. After 2 days, the search for Heather's body finally turned up a thigh bone from the garden. They continued to dig to find the rest of Heather's body, but instead found 2 more thigh bones. This was when authorities realized this was not just a domestic murder case. Once Fred West was confronted with this evidence, he admitted to a second murder. He may have hoped that this would make the police stop digging, but once he realized they were planning on taking his home apart, he wrote an extraordinary note. "I wish to admit to a further approximate 9 killings, expressly Charmaine, Rena, Linda Go, and others to be identified." West was taken back to 25 Cromwell Street to mark the location of the other bodies. He was absolutely adamant that he acted alone and that his wife was not involved. Eventually, West admitted to 12 murders, 9 hidden away in the cellar and garden, and 3 others buried elsewhere. The authorities labeled Fred West as a prolific serial killer and wanted to identify when he started killing and why. Fred West grew up in a village 16 miles from Gloucester. He left school barely able to read or write. He soon got into trouble for petty crimes, but when he was 19, he was charged for a far more serious crime involving his 13-year-old sister. Fred was accused of having sex with his sister, who became pregnant. When it came to court, she said that she would not give evidence against her brother, and the case collapsed. This was the start of Fred's lifetime of deviant sexual activity. 1 year later, Fred met his first wife, Rena, who he would be with for the next 9 years. Rena had a small child to an unknown man named Charmaine. Soon after their marriage, Rena had a second daughter, Fred West's first child. Rena wanted help with the children, so she invited her friend Anne McFall to come and live with them. As far as we know, she was to be Fred West's first victim. The 18-year-old was nearly 7 months pregnant with Fred West's child when she disappeared without a trace. She was the last victim to which he admitted the murder of. At the time of Anne's murder, Fred West's marriage became volatile and broke down. Rena moved to Scotland, leaving Fred West looking after her 2 daughters, Charmaine and Anne-Marie. Fred West, now 27, was on the hunt for a new partner. He was soon to find his perfect match, 15-year-old Rosemary Letts. Rose's upbringing was extremely tough and dysfunctional, to say the least. She was brought up in a household where incest was part and parcel of everyday life. It is thought that her father sexually abused her. Within a year of meeting Fred, Rose fell pregnant and began living with him in a flat in Gloucester. Soon after giving birth to the child, Fred was arrested for dishonesty and theft, leaving 17-year-old Rose to look after Rena's 2 young children as well as Heather, her own newborn baby. Later it was found that there was evidence from neighbors that she was mistreating the children, especially Charmaine, to which neither Rose nor Fred had any biological relation. Sometime in June 1971, Charmaine disappeared. Rose told everyone that she had gone to live with her birth mother in Scotland. The little girl was found 23 years later, underneath an extension built at the flat by Fred West. Although Fred admitted killing Charmaine, he was in prison around the time of her death. This led police to believe that the killer of the 8-year-old was probably Rose. Soon after Fred was released from prison, Rena Watts came back looking for her children. This presented a big issue for Fred and Rose because one of the children she was looking for was in fact dead. Fred later admitted that he took Rena out drinking, got her drunk, and took her to a nearby field, killing her and burying her body there. In 1972, Fred and Rose West got married and moved into 25 Cromwell Street with their growing family. Needing money to help pay the mortgage, they began advertising for lodgers to come and live with them. Linda Go was the first lodger to be murdered. She disappeared in 1973. Her mother was told that she had moved on to live elsewhere. Soon after, in November of the same year, Carol Ann Cooper went missing from a bus stop near the West's home, and in December, a student, Lucy Partington, also vanished from a bus stop. In 1974, Swiss student Therese Siegenthaler went missing after hitching a lift. Later that year, 15-year-old Shirley Hubbard became the 3rd victim to vanish from a bus stop. It was clear that the West's murderous behavior was intensifying, and the media began to link the disappearance of young girls in the area, but there was no evidence to point authorities towards the Wests. In April 1975, Juanita Mott disappeared. It was thought that she was hitching into Gloucester. Shirley Robinson, who was a lodger at 25 Cromwell Street, was also to fall victim to the Wests. Shirley became pregnant with Fred's child and entertained a fantasy of becoming his wife. The relationship between the two caused Rose, who was also having extramarital affairs, to get extremely jealous. Shirley disappeared in 1978 when she was 8 months pregnant. the Wests told everybody that she had gone to live abroad. 1 year later, they befriended and killed another troubled teenager, 17-year-old Allison Chambers. For the next 8 years, there is no evidence of any other murders at Cromwell Street. It is unknown whether they had stopped killing or if they had become much more careful about what they did with the bodies. Although, it was at this point that Rose began having more children. Rose West was now the mother of 8 children, and they became the targets for her sadistic tendencies. The West children were taken to the hospital 31 times in 20 years. The children were intimidated and terrorized into silence. However, one of the eldest children had decided to move away, and her younger sister, 16-year-old Heather West, was also desperate to leave. In 1987, fearing that Heather may go to the police if she left the family home, Fred and Rose West killed their daughter and buried the body under the patio at Cromwell Street. In an ironic twist, it was Heather's disappearance which would lead the police to the West door almost 7 years later and ultimately uncover all the other murders which Fred and Rose West had been able to keep hidden for so many years. By June 1994, the police believed they had enough evidence to jointly charge both Fred and Rose West with all the Cromwell Street murders. At the hearing, the couple were reunited after 4 months apart, but Rose had decided to completely distance herself from Fred. She expressed that she wanted nothing to do with him. A few months after this rejection, Fred West hanged himself. Rose didn't display any sense of grief or sorrow when she found out Fred had died. In fact, she almost appeared to be relieved, as she knew that Fred was the only person who could have put any of the responsibility for the killings on her. With him gone, Rose thought that she may get let off. Although Rose West was going to stand trial for all of the murders at Cromwell Street, there was no direct evidence to link her to any of the crimes. That was until an important witness came forward. She had been attacked by the Wests in 1972, and unlike the others was let go after promising not to tell anybody. Caroline Owens had been a lodger and babysitter at Cromwell Street. The Wests wanted to get involved with her sexually, but she was not interested. Caroline was bound and was sadistically abused and raped. When she cried for help, Rose nearly killed her by putting a pillow over her face.
When I came through, they tied my hands behind my back with my scarf, and they were wrapping like parcel tape all around my head. We're just going to make you a cup of tea, tidy your back up, and then we're going to take you home. And they did do that. They sat me down and they took the tape off me. And so I tried to shout out. Rose put a pillow over my head and smothered me. First I was kind of struggling with it, and then I thought, no, just go with it.
After the assault, Caroline went to the police, but was not prepared to give any evidence on what happened to her in an open court, so the Wests were let go. Determined to not let Rose go free once again, she gave evidence against her in 1995. Rose West was brought to Winchester Crown Court in October 1995, facing 10 murder charges. 9 of those were from 25 Cromwell Street, including that of her 16-year-old daughter, and the 10th being the murder of 8-year-old Charmaine, Fred West's stepdaughter. A forensic dentist was able to identify the time that Charmaine died by the size of her emerging teeth. Records show, as police suspected, that Fred West was in prison at the time that Charmaine was killed. The trial lasted more than 6 weeks, but the jury took less than 24 hours to reach their verdict. All 10 verdicts read guilty. Rosemary West was sentenced to a whole life tariff, meaning that she will never be released from prison and will die behind bars. To this day, Rosemary West has never admitted her guilt for any of the murders. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with our videos. See you next time.